The dormitory holds its breath at this hour, 2:30 in the morning, and the only sounds are the mechanical hum of vending machines 3 floors down and the distant whisper of someone's television bleeding through thin walls. I've grown accustomed to this particular silence. The weight of it, the way it settles over everything like dust. It's the kind of quiet that makes you hyper-aware of your own heartbeat, your own breathing, the way the old radiator clicks and sighs in the corner of my cramped single room. I'm lying flat on my back, staring at the ceiling tiles that I've memorized over months of sleepless nights. 23 tiles across, 17 deep. The one directly above my pillow has a water stain shaped like a bird in flight, or maybe a plane, depending on how you squint at it. I've spent hours cataloging every crack, every imperfection in this small square of space that's supposed to be home. The knock, when it comes, is so soft, I almost convince myself I imagined it. 3 gentle taps, hesitant like whoever's on the other side isn't entirely sure they want to be there. But I know that knock. I've heard it 1,000 times over the past 4 years, after tests we studied for together, before parties he wanted me to join, during those late nights when he couldn't sleep and needed someone to talk to about nothing and everything. I swing my legs over the side of the narrow mattress, bare feet hitting the cold linoleum floor. The walk to the door feels longer than it should, though it's only 6 steps in this shoebox of a room. My hand hovers over the lock for a moment, and I find myself holding my breath, as if opening this door might change something fundamental about the world on the other side. When I turn the handle, Nolan is standing in the hallway, but he's not the Nolan I know. This version of him looks smaller somehow, despite being nearly 6 inches taller than me. His dark hair is disheveled, sticking up at angles that suggest he's been running his hands through it. The navy hoodie he's wearing is only halfway zipped, revealing the white t-shirt underneath. And there's something in his posture, shoulders hunched, hands shoved deep into his pockets, that speaks to a vulnerability I've rarely seen from him. His eyes meet mine, and there's something there I can't quite name. It's urgent and scared and desperate all at once, like he's standing at the edge of a cliff and can't decide whether to jump or step back to safety. The hallway light casts harsh shadows across his face, making his cheekbones appear sharper, his expression more angular than usual. "Don't tell anyone," he says, and his voice is barely above a whisper. The words come out rushed, like he's afraid that speaking them too loudly might make them real, might give them weight he's not ready to carry. He doesn't wait for me to respond. He steps past me into the room, his shoulder brushing against mine as he moves, and I catch the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something else. Laundry detergent, maybe, or the particular smell of nervous sweat. He shuts the door behind him with deliberate care, turning the lock with a soft click that seems to echo in the small space. I stand there, frozen, watching as he surveys my room, as if seeing it for the first time. His gaze lingers on the desk cluttered with textbooks and sketches, the small refrigerator humming in the corner, the narrow bed that suddenly seems impossibly small. The air between us feels different, charged with something I don't dare name. Without asking permission, without explanation, Nolan walks to my bed and pulls back the rumpled covers. The motion is fluid, practiced, as if he's done this before, though we both know he hasn't. He slides beneath the sheets, fully clothed, his head finding the pillow that still holds the indent from where mine had been moments before. The mattress dips under his weight, and I can see the outline of his body beneath the thin blanket. He's lying on his side, facing the wall, his knees drawn up slightly. From where I'm standing by the door, he looks impossibly young and impossibly lost, like a child seeking comfort in the dark. My pulse is racing now, thundering in my ears so loudly I'm sure he must hear it. Every instinct tells me to ask questions. Why are you here? What's wrong? What does this mean? But something in his posture warns me off. This moment feels fragile, like speaking too loudly or moving too quickly might shatter whatever courage brought him to my door at 2:30 in the morning. I realize I'm still standing by the door, key in hand, staring at the boy who has occupied my thoughts for more years than I care to admit. The same boy who throws his arm around my shoulders when we walk across campus, who steals food off my plate without asking, who has never shown the slightest indication that he sees me as anything more than his reliable, steady friend. The floor is cold beneath my feet, and I'm suddenly aware of how thin my pajama pants are, how the room's heating system never quite manages to ward off the October chill. But I don't move toward the bed. Not yet, because crossing that distance feels like crossing a line, and I'm not sure either of us is ready for what's on the other side. Nolan shifts, and the sound of the sheets rustling fills the silence. He turns slightly, just enough that I can see the side of his face, the way his eyelashes cast tiny shadows on his cheek. His breathing is uneven, not the steady rhythm of someone drifting towards sleep, but the careful, controlled breathing of someone trying very hard to stay calm. The weight of his presence in my room, in my bed, is overwhelming. This is Nolan, the boy who dated Sarah Mitchell for 6 months junior year, who always has some girl texting him, who talks about women the way other guys talk about sports or music. The boy who has never, not once in the 4 years I've known him, given any indication that he thinks about men the way I think about him. And yet here he is, curled beneath my blankets, having slipped into my space like he belongs here. Like this is normal. Like friends do this all the time. But we both know they don't. I finally force myself to move, though each step toward the bed feels weighted with significance. The floorboard near the window creaks slightly under my weight, a sound I've learned to avoid during daylight hours when my neighbors might complain, and Nolan's shoulders tense at the noise. When I reach the edge of the mattress, I hesitate. The sensible thing would be to ask him what's wrong, to offer him my desk chair or the sleeping bag I keep in the closet for when friends visit. The sensible thing would be to maintain the boundaries that have kept our friendship safely platonic for 4 years. Instead, I lift the corner of the blanket and slide in beside him. The bed is barely wide enough for one person, let alone two, and the moment I settle onto the mattress, I'm acutely aware of every point where our bodies nearly touch. My shoulder is an inch from his back. My knee hovers close enough to his leg that I can feel the warmth radiating from his skin through the thin fabric of his jeans. Neither of us speaks. The silence stretches between us, heavy with questions neither of us seems brave enough to ask. I can hear his breathing, still uneven, and the small sounds he makes when he shifts position. The familiar scent of his cologne is stronger now, mingling with the detergent smell of my sheets and something else that's just uniquely him. I stare at the back of his head, at the way his dark hair curls slightly at the nape of his neck, and try to understand what's happening. Try to make sense of why my straight friend has shown up at my door in the middle of the night, why he's lying in my bed, why the air between us feels electric with possibility and terror in equal measure. Don't tell anyone, he had said. But tell anyone what? That he's here, that something has shifted between us, that the careful equilibrium we've maintained for years is suddenly, irrevocably off balance. The radiator gives another soft click, and somewhere down the hall, a door opens and closes. The sounds of the dormitory continuing its quiet nighttime existence, oblivious to the fact that everything in room 304 has just changed forever. I've always been the listener. Even as children, when other kids were climbing trees or racing bicycles, I was the one sitting on the sidelines, sketching in margins of notebooks, watching the world with careful eyes. My mother used to say I was born observing, that I came into this world already taking notes on everything around me. Maybe that's why I noticed things others missed. The way teachers favored certain students, how friendships shifted with unspoken tensions, the small cruelties that pass for normal teenage behavior. In high school, while my classmates threw themselves into drama and romance with reckless abandon, I built my life around predictable patterns. Morning run at 6:30, shower, coffee with exactly 2 sugars, first period chemistry where I sat in the 3rd row, second seat from the window. Lunch alone with a book, usually something dense and literary that made me feel older than I was. Afternoons in the art room, where the smell of turpentine and charcoal dust became as familiar as my own breathing. College hasn't changed me much. My routines have simply adapted to new surroundings. I wake at 7, attend morning lectures with the dedication of someone afraid that missing even one might unravel everything I've worked for. My part-time job at the university library suits me perfectly. Quiet hours surrounded by books, helping other students find research materials, reshelving volumes in their proper order. There's something deeply satisfying about the Dewey Decimal System, the way everything has its place and belongs exactly where it should. My evenings are spent in this small room, sketching portraits of people I observe across campus, or sometimes just drawing hands, faces, the curve of someone's shoulder when they don't know they're being watched. I have notebooks full of these drawings, most of them incomplete, abandoned when I lose interest or when the subject moves away before I can capture what I was reaching for. I've never told anyone about the feelings I carry. There seems to be no safe space for that conversation, no template for explaining that sometimes I watch the way a particular boy's mouth moves when he laughs, or notice how another one's eyes crinkle at the corners when he smiles. In high school, there was David Chun, who sat behind me in calculus and sometimes leaned close enough that I could smell his shampoo. Senior year brought Marcus Rivera, whose easy confidence and quick wit made my stomach flutter whenever he said my name. But these were silent attractions, carefully hidden, never acted upon. And then there was Nolan. We met the second week of senior year, thrown together in Mr. Peterson's AP literature class. Where I was quiet and observant, Nolan was magnetic. He had this way of walking into a room like he owned it, not through arrogance, but through some natural charisma that drew people toward him. Within days, he had become the center of his own solar system, with classmates orbiting around his easy humor and careless charm. He was loud in the way that popular kids often are, quick with jokes that made everyone laugh, the first to volunteer for class presentations, completely unafraid of being the center of attention. He wore his confidence like a well-fitted jacket, comfortable and natural. Teachers loved him because he participated enthusiastically. Girls loved him because he flirted just enough to be flattering without being crude. Other boys loved him because he made them feel included in something larger than themselves. I should have been invisible to him. By every social law of high school hierarchy, we existed in different worlds. But somehow, inexplicably, Nolan chose me as his friend. It started small, asking to borrow a pen, comparing notes after a particularly difficult quiz, sitting beside me when his usual crowd was absent. Then it became something more intentional. He began seeking me out between classes, walking with me to the parking lot, inviting me to join his group at lunch. I never understood why. My best guess was that he found my quietness restful after spending most of his time with people who demanded constant entertainment. With me, he could simply exist without performing. We developed an easy rhythm. Long drives through town while he talked and I listened, shared playlists where his love of indie rock mixed with my preference for folk and jazz, hours spent in his bedroom or mine, supposedly studying, but mostly just talking about nothing important. The dangerous part was how natural it felt. Nolan had this habit of being casually physical, throwing his arm around my shoulders when we walked, flopping onto my bed when he visited, stealing food from my lunch tray without asking. It was the kind of easy intimacy that straight boys take for granted, meaningless to him but loaded with significance for me. I learned to accept these moments without reading too much into them, to enjoy the warmth of his attention without expecting it to mean anything beyond friendship. But late at night, alone in my room, I would replay every casual touch, every moment when he leaned close enough that I could count his eyelashes. I would sketch his profile from memory, trying to capture the exact curve of his smile or the way his hair fell across his forehead when he was concentrating. These drawings I kept hidden, buried beneath homework assignments and class notes where no one would accidentally discover them. Now, lying beside him in this narrow dormitory bed, all those carefully maintained boundaries feel impossibly fragile. The boy who has spent 4 years casually invading my personal space has finally crossed a line neither of us can pretend doesn't exist. His presence in my bed transforms everything we've been to each other, makes every shared glance and casual touch feel like it was leading to this moment. The space between us is maybe 6 inches, but it feels infinite and non-existent at the same time. I can hear every breath he takes, feel the slight movement of the mattress when he shifts position. The familiar scent of his cologne mixed with laundry detergent creates an intimacy I've never experienced, even in my most vivid imaginings. This is uncharted territory for both of us, though I suspect for very different reasons. The silence stretches between us for what feels like hours, but is probably only minutes. I can feel the tension radiating from Nolan's body, the way his shoulders remain rigid beneath the thin cotton of his t-shirt. Every few seconds, he shifts slightly, as if he's trying to find a comfortable position, but can't quite settle. The mattress responds to each movement, springs creaking softly in the darkness. Finally, he speaks, his voice muffled against the pillow. "Couldn't sleep," he says, and there's something hollow in the words, like he's testing them out to see if they sound believable. "My roommate's got some girl over. They've been at it for hours." It's a reasonable explanation. Jake Morrison, Nolan's roommate, is notorious for his late-night activities. Half the floor has complained about the noise at some point or another. But there's something in Nolan's tone that doesn't quite ring true, a careful neutrality that suggests he's choosing his words deliberately. I want to push to ask the questions that are burning in my chest. Why my room instead of crashing with any of the dozen other friends who would welcome him? Why slip into my bed instead of asking for a spare blanket and taking the floor? Why the desperate urgency in his eyes when I opened the door, like he was running from something I can't see? But I've learned to read Nolan's moods over the years. There's a particular quality to his silence when he doesn't want to be pressed, a wall that goes up behind his eyes that warns you to back off. I recognize it now in the rigid line of his spine, the way he's turned his face toward the wall. So instead of questioning him, I simply lie there, listening to his uneven breathing and try to ignore the way my heart hammers against my ribs. The old radiator gives another metallic sigh, and somewhere down the hall, a door slams. Normal dormitory, sounds that feel amplified in the charged atmosphere of this small room. I'm hyper-aware of everything. The way the sheets rustle when either of us moves, the faint hum of fluorescent lighting seeping under the door from the hallway, the particular rhythm of Nolan's breathing that tells me he's nowhere close to sleep. Then, without warning, he shifts. Not the small adjustments he's been making, but a deliberate movement that brings him closer to my side of the bed. His shoulder brushes against mine, skin warm through the thin fabric of his hoodie, and I feel my breath catch in my throat. The contact is light, almost accidental, but there's something intentional about the way he doesn't immediately pull away. Another shift, smaller this time, and now his knee touches mine. The points of contact feel electric, sending small shocks through my nervous system. I lie perfectly still, afraid that moving might break whatever spell is settling over us, afraid that staying still might communicate something I'm not ready to acknowledge. "It's just for tonight," Nolan whispers, his voice so low I almost miss it. The words are directed toward the wall, not to me, as if he's trying to convince himself rather than explain anything to me. "Don't make it weird." The phrase hits me like a physical blow. Don't make it weird. As if the weirdness is something I might create rather than something that already exists in the space between us. As if the charged atmosphere in this room is my responsibility, my interpretation, my problem to manage. But even as the words sting, I understand what he's really saying. He's drawing a line, establishing the rules for whatever this is. Temporary, meaningless, nothing that needs to be examined or discussed or acknowledged in daylight. Just two friends sharing a bed because circumstances have left him with nowhere else to go. The reasonable part of my mind knows I should accept this explanation, should be grateful for the clear boundaries he's trying to establish. It would be easier that way, safer for both of us. I could play along, pretend that having him in my bed is nothing more than a practical solution to his housing problem. I could ignore the way my pulse quickens every time he shifts closer, the way his presence fills up all the empty spaces in this small room. But my body betrays me. When he moves again, settling more fully against my side, I don't pull away. When his arm comes to rest across my chest, fingers splayed against my ribs, I don't remind him about maintaining appropriate distance. The weight of his arm is warm and solid, anchoring me to this moment in a way that makes it impossible to pretend this is just two friends sharing sleeping space. I can feel his breath against my shoulder now, warm puffs of air that raise goosebumps along my arms. His face is turned toward me, close enough that if I shifted slightly, I could see his expression in the dim light filtering through my window blinds. Close enough to count his eyelashes, to trace the line of his jaw with my eyes, to notice the small scar above his left eyebrow that he got falling off his bike when he was 12. The intimacy is overwhelming. This is closer than we've ever been. More physical contact than 4 years of friendship has ever included. His body is pressed against mine from shoulder to knee, separated only by the thin layers of our clothing. I can feel the steady thrum of his heartbeat through his chest, can sense the tension in his muscles beginning to slowly release. But beneath his apparent relaxation, I sense something else. A current of awareness that matches my own, a hypervigilance that suggests he's as conscious of every point of contact as I am. His breathing, though slower now, still isn't the deep, even rhythm of someone drifting towards sleep. There's something deliberate about the way he's positioned himself, something intentional about the intimacy he's creating while simultaneously dismissing it as meaningless. Don't make it weird, he had said. But weird implies something outside the norm, something unexpected or uncomfortable. What's happening between us doesn't feel weird. It feels inevitable, like we've been moving toward this moment for years without realizing it. It feels like the most natural thing in the world, and maybe that's what scares him. He's gone when I wake up the next morning. The indentation where his body had been pressed against the mattress has already begun to fade, though the pillowcase still carries the faint scent of his cologne. I lie there for several minutes, staring at the empty space beside me, wondering if I dreamed the whole thing. But the sheets are rumpled in ways that speak to two bodies instead of one, and when I press my face to the pillow where his head had been, I can still smell him. At breakfast, Nolan acts as if nothing happened. He slides into the seat across from me in the dining hall with his usual easy grin, steals a piece of toast from my plate, complains loudly about his chemistry professor's tendency to assign weekend homework. His performance is flawless, so natural that I almost convince myself I imagined the desperate look in his eyes when he appeared at my door, the way his body had curved against mine in the darkness. But I catch him watching me when he thinks I'm not looking. Quick glances that he cuts short the moment our eyes meet, as if he's checking to see whether I'm going to say something, whether I'm going to break the unspoken agreement to pretend nothing has changed between us. I don't say anything. I've learned to follow his lead in social situations, to take my cues from his comfort level. If he wants to pretend that sharing my bed was meaningless, then I'll play along. It's easier that way, safer for both of us. The second night, there's no knock. I'm lying in bed reading when I hear the soft click of my door opening. Nolan slips inside like a shadow, closes the door quietly behind him, turns the lock with practiced efficiency. This time he doesn't offer excuses about roommate troubles or noise complaints. He simply pulls back the covers and slides in beside me, as if this has always been our routine. I set my book aside and turn off the bedside lamp without being asked. The darkness settles around us like a familiar blanket, and within moments, Nolan has arranged himself against my side with the same careful deliberation as the night before. His arm finds its place across my chest, his knee slots against mine, his face turns toward my neck so that I can feel his breath against my collarbone. "It's just for tonight," he murmurs again, but the words carry less conviction now. They sound more like a mantra he's repeating to himself, a prayer to whatever gods govern the boundaries between friendship and something else entirely. By the third night, he doesn't bother with explanations at all. He appears in my room sometime after midnight, strips off his hoodie and jeans with matter-of-fact efficiency, and climbs into bed wearing only his boxers and t-shirt. The routine has established itself so quickly that it feels like we've been doing this for months instead of days. I should be more concerned about what this means, should probably insist on some kind of conversation about boundaries and expectations. But there's something seductive about the unspoken nature of our arrangement, the way it exists only in darkness, untouched by the complications that daylight might bring. In my bed, under the cover of night, we could be something we're not allowed to be anywhere else. The intimacy deepens gradually, so slowly that each change feels natural, inevitable. On the fourth night, Nolan's fingers find the hem of my t-shirt and slip beneath it, his palm resting flat against my stomach. His touch is warm and slightly rough from his part-time job at the campus bookstore, and I have to bite my lip to keep from making a sound that might shatter the careful silence we've constructed around these moments. On the fifth night, he pulls me closer until my back is pressed against his chest, and I can feel every breath he takes. His arm tightens around my waist, possessive in a way that makes my heart race, and I allow myself to sink into the warmth of his embrace. When he whispers my name against my shoulder, his voice thick with sleep and something else I don't dare identify, I pretend I don't hear the longing threaded through the syllables. By the end of the first week, we've developed our own silent language. I know by the way he closes the door whether he's had a good day or a difficult one. He can tell by my breathing whether I'm actually asleep or just pretending, and he adjusts his level of closeness accordingly. We move around each other in the narrow bed like dancers who've rehearsed these steps for years, finding positions that maximize contact while maintaining the illusion that this is all perfectly innocent. The bed that was once my solitary refuge has become ours. I find myself looking forward to the sound of his key in my lock, to the rustle of fabric as he undresses in the darkness, to the moment when his weight settles beside me and transforms the lonely space into something warm and shared. During the day, I catch myself thinking about the way his arm feels draped across my ribs, the particular rhythm of his breathing when he finally relaxes into sleep. But we never talk about it. Not during these nighttime visits, and certainly not during our daylight interactions. The rules are unspoken but absolute. This exists only in darkness, only in silence, only for as long as we can both pretend it doesn't mean anything more than friendship taken to its logical extreme. The secret we're building between us grows heavier with each passing night, but neither of us seems willing to be the first to acknowledge its weight. We're walking a tightrope, balanced precariously between friendship and something that has no name, something that might destroy us both if we look at it too directly. But for now, in the safety of my small room, we don't have to look. We can simply exist in this space we've created, this pocket of intimacy that belongs only to us. 2 weeks into our unspoken arrangement, the silence becomes unbearable. Not the comfortable quiet we've learned to navigate, the wordless communication that happens in darkness when bodies speak louder than voices. This is a different kind of silence, thick with questions that neither of us dares to ask, heavy with the weight of everything we're not saying. It's a Thursday night or maybe Friday. The days have begun to blur together, marked only by the rhythm of Nolan's visits. He's lying beside me in his usual position, arm draped across my chest, face turned toward my shoulder. But tonight something is different. There's a restlessness in his body that I can feel through the thin barrier of our clothing, a tension that doesn't ease even after we've settled into our familiar configuration. His breathing is too controlled, too deliberate, the kind of careful rhythm that comes from someone trying very hard to appear relaxed when they're anything but. Every few minutes, he shifts slightly, as if he's fighting the urge to move away or press closer. I can't tell which. His fingers tap a nervous pattern against my ribs, a habit I recognize from when he's anxious about exams or stressed about something he doesn't want to discuss. The radiator gives its usual metallic sigh, and somewhere down the hall, someone's alarm clock goes off, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps and a door slamming. Normal dormitory sounds that usually fade into background noise, but tonight they feel intrusive, reminders of the world that exists beyond these four walls, beyond the careful bubble we've constructed around ourselves. I lie there listening to his restless breathing, feeling the tension radiating from his body, and realize I can't do this anymore. Can't pretend that what we're doing is normal or meaningless or temporary. Can't continue this elaborate dance where we share the most intimate space possible while acting like strangers in daylight. The questions that have been building inside me for 2 weeks suddenly feel too large to contain. Why me? The words escape before I can stop them, spoken so quietly into the darkness that for a moment I think he might not have heard. They hang in the air between us, 2 simple words that carry the weight of everything I've been afraid to ask. He goes completely still beside me. Even his careful breathing stops for several seconds, as if the question has frozen him in place. I can feel his heart hammering against my shoulder blade, the sudden spike in his pulse betraying the calm he's trying to project. For a long moment, neither of us moves. The silence stretches so long that I begin to wonder if he's going to pretend he didn't hear me, if we're going to add this moment to the growing list of things we don't acknowledge. But then he shifts, pulling back just enough that I can feel the cool air rushing into the space where his body had been pressed against mine. "I don't know," he says finally, but his voice is rough, uncertain. It's the first time I've heard him sound unsure of himself since this whole thing began. The first crack in the careful composure he's maintained during our nighttime encounters. He's quiet for so long after that I think the conversation is over. Think we're going to retreat back into our safe silence, pretend the question was never asked. But then he speaks again, his words coming slowly, as if he's testing each one before letting it out. "Maybe because you don't ask for anything," he says. "You don't expect me to be someone I'm not. With everyone else, there's always performance. Like I have to be the version of myself that they want to see." His fingers find mine beneath the blanket, a tentative touch that sends electricity through my nervous system. It's the first time he's initiated contact that feels deliberately intimate rather than casually affectionate. The first time he's reached for me instead of simply allowing proximity to happen. "With you, I can just be," he continues, and there's something vulnerable in his voice that I've never heard before. Something raw and honest that makes my chest tight with emotion I don't know how to process. I turn toward him in the darkness, though I can barely make out his features in the dim light filtering through my window blinds. But I can sense the way he's looking at me, can feel the weight of his gaze, even if I can't see his eyes clearly. "Because I feel safe. With you." His voice drops even lower, barely audible. And maybe that's not all it is. The confession hangs between us like a bridge neither of us is sure we're ready to cross. Those last words, "maybe that's not all it is," acknowledge something we've both been carefully avoiding. The possibility that safety isn't the only thing drawing him to my room night after night. That the intimacy we've been building in darkness might mean more than either of us has been willing to admit. My heart is beating so hard I'm sure he must be able to hear it. This feels like a moment that could change everything or destroy everything, depending on how carefully we navigate it. The wrong word, the wrong response, could send him running back to the safety of pretending none of this matters. But his fingers are still intertwined with mine beneath the blanket, warm and slightly trembling. That small point of contact feels like an anchor, keeping me grounded in this moment, even as everything around us shifts and changes. And maybe that's not all it is. The words echo in the small space between us, creating possibilities I never dared to imagine. For the first time since this all began, I allow myself to wonder if the boy who has always insisted he was straight, who dates girls and talks about women like they're the only option that exists, might be feeling something for me that has nothing to do with safety and everything to do with want. The silence that follows is different from the ones that came before. It's not heavy with avoidance or thick with things we're afraid to say. It's expectant, charged with possibility, trembling on the edge of something that might finally give a name to whatever we've been building together in the darkness. His fingers tighten around mine, and I can feel the exact moment when something shifts between us. It's subtle, like the change in air pressure before a storm, but unmistakable. The careful distance we've maintained, even in our closest moments, begins to dissolve, replaced by something more intentional, more deliberate. He turns toward me slowly, as if he's moving through water, and suddenly we're facing each other in the narrow bed. Our foreheads are nearly touching, close enough that I can feel the warmth of his breath against my lips, can see the faint outline of his features in the dim light seeping through my window blinds. This is closer than we've ever been while awake, while conscious of every choice we're making. I can hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, so loud I'm sure he must hear it too. Every instinct tells me to pull back, to preserve the safe distance that has allowed us to maintain the fiction that this is all innocent. But his hand is still holding mine beneath the blanket, his thumb tracing small circles against my palm that send shivers up my arm. The air between us feels charged, electric with possibility and terror in equal measure. We're balanced on the edge of something that will change everything, and there's no pretending otherwise. No more carefully constructed explanations or temporary arrangements. Whatever happens next will have to be acknowledged, will have to be faced in daylight. His free hand moves to my face, fingers barely grazing my cheek in a touch, so light it might be accidental. But nothing about this moment feels accidental. Every breath, every slight movement, every heartbeat seems deliberate, chosen, inevitable. "Tell me to stop," he whispers, and his voice is rough with something I've never heard before. It's not a command or a plea, but something in between. A final offer of escape before we cross a line that can't be uncrossed. But even as he says the words, his thumb traces the line of my cheekbone, and I can feel the tremor in his hand that betrays how much he doesn't want me to say stop. How much he wants me to choose this, choose him, choose whatever we might become together. I should say it. Should give us both an easy exit from this moment that feels too big, too important, too dangerous. Should preserve the friendship that has been the most important relationship in my life for 4 years. Should protect him from having to confront feelings that clearly terrify him. Should protect myself from the possibility that this is just curiosity or confusion that will pass with daylight. But I can't. The word won't come, because for the first time since he started appearing at my door, I can see something in his eyes that looks like want. Not just safety or comfort or escape from his own thoughts, but actual desire directed at me, at this moment, at the possibility of us. Instead of speaking, I lean forward, just slightly, just enough to close the small distance between us, just enough to press my lips to his in the lightest possible kiss. The contact is electric. His breath catches against my mouth. And for a heartbeat, I think I've made a terrible mistake, that he's going to pull away and this will be the end of everything between us. But then he's kissing me back, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. His hand moves to the back of my neck, fingers threading through my hair as he deepens the kiss. There's hunger in it, yes, but also something desperate, like he's drowning and I'm the only thing keeping him afloat. Years of careful distance collapse in an instant, replaced by the overwhelming reality of his mouth against mine, his body pressed closer than we've ever allowed ourselves to be. When we finally break apart, we're both breathing hard. His forehead rests against mine, and I can feel the slight tremor running through his body, the same nervous energy that's making my hand shake. "I've never," he starts to say, then stops, shaking his head slightly. The words hang incomplete between us, but I understand what he's trying to tell me. That this is new territory for him. That whatever he's feeling is unfamiliar and frightening and maybe wonderful all at once. "Neither have I whisper back because it's true in all the ways that matter. I've imagined this moment countless times, but the reality is nothing like my carefully constructed fantasies. It's messy, and more uncertain and infinitely more precious because it's real, because it's him, because he chose this just as much as I did." He kisses me again, and this time there's less hesitation, more certainty. His hands map the familiar territory of my shoulders and back as if he's discovering them for the first time. Every touch feels both foreign and perfectly natural, like we're learning a language we've always known how to speak. When his fingers find the hem of my t-shirt, I don't stop him. When he pulls back to look at me, asking permission with his eyes, I nod before he can form the question into words. The careful barriers we've constructed over weeks of sharing this space finally crumble completely. Clothes are discarded with trembling hands and whispered reassurances. Skin touches skin for the first time, and the intimacy is overwhelming, perfect, terrifying in its intensity. We move together slowly, carefully mapping this new territory with reverent touches and barely audible sighs. This isn't just curiosity or confusion or a moment of weakness. This is choice, deliberate and mutual and real. We've stepped across the line we've been walking for weeks, and there's no going back now. In the darkness of my small room, wrapped in each other's arms, we become something new, something that has no name yet, but feels as essential as breathing. Something that will have to be faced and defined and either embraced or abandoned when morning comes. But for now, there's only this, the weight of his body against mine, the sound of his breathing gradually slowing towards sleep, the profound intimacy of being chosen by someone you never dared to hope might choose you back. The dormitory holds its breath again, but this time the silence feels different. It's no longer the heavy quiet of things unspoken, but the soft hush that follows revelation, the gentle stillness that wraps around moments too precious to disturb. The same mechanical hum of vending machines drifts up from 3 floors below. The same occasional door slam echoes down the hallway. But these sounds feel distant now, like they belong to a world that exists outside this small room, outside this moment that has changed everything. Nolan lies beside me, his breathing finally settled into the deep, even rhythm of actual sleep. His arm is draped across my chest with a possessiveness that would have terrified us both just hours ago, but now feels as natural as my own heartbeat. His face is turned toward me, relaxed in a way I've rarely seen, the usual tension that tightens his jaw completely absent. In sleep, he looks younger, more vulnerable, like the careful walls he maintains during daylight have finally been allowed to crumble. I can't sleep, not because I'm uncomfortable or anxious, but because I don't want to miss a single moment of this. I want to memorize the weight of his arm across my ribs, the particular way his hair falls across his forehead when he's not conscious enough to push it back, the soft sound he makes when he shifts closer in his sleep. These details feel infinitely precious now that they're allowed to mean something. The ceiling tiles above my bed are the same 23 across, 17 deep that I've been staring at for months. The water stain shaped like a bird in flight hasn't changed, but everything else has been transformed. The narrow bed that was once my solitary refuge has become our shared secret, but the nature of that secret has shifted completely. We're no longer hiding from something we're afraid to acknowledge. We're protecting something we've chosen to create together. My fingers trace lazy patterns along his shoulder blade, and even in sleep he responds to the touch, pressing closer with a small sound of contentment. The intimacy is overwhelming in the most beautiful way possible. This is what I've been longing for without quite knowing it. Not just the physical closeness, though that sends warmth through every nerve ending, but the emotional honesty. The end of pretending. The permission to feel everything I've been carefully containing for years. But even in this moment of perfect connection, I can feel the weight of what morning will bring. The questions we'll have to face about what this means, about how it changes things between us, about whether he'll be able to look at me the same way when daylight forces us back into the roles we've always played. The words he whispered before, "Don't tell anyone," take on new significance now. They're no longer just about hiding a friendship that had crossed boundaries. They're about protecting something infinitely more fragile and more precious. I understand now why he appeared at my door that first night looking so desperate, so afraid. He must have been fighting these feelings for longer than I realized. Must have been carrying his own secret longing that matched mine. The roommate excuse was just that, an excuse to give himself permission to be close to me in a way that daylight wouldn't allow. He was reaching for something he couldn't name, testing boundaries he wasn't sure he was brave enough to cross. The courage it must have taken to slip into my bed that first time, to maintain the fiction that it meant nothing while hoping it might mean everything, staggers me. All those nights of careful positioning, of intimate touches disguised as casual affection, of building something between us one barely perceptible degree at a time. He was protecting both of us from the possibility of rejection while creating opportunities for something more to develop naturally. His fingers tighten slightly against my ribs, and I wonder what he's dreaming about. Whether his subconscious is replaying the moments that led us here, or imagining what comes next. Whether he's as afraid as I am of losing this fragile new thing we've created, or if he's found the same peace in finally acknowledging the truth that I have. Outside my window, the first hints of dawn are beginning to creep across the horizon. Not enough to wake him yet, but enough to remind me that this perfect bubble of intimacy and honesty will soon have to face the complications of the waking world. We'll have to figure out how to be around other people who don't know what happened between us. We'll have to navigate dining hall conversations and study sessions and all the casual interactions that make up the rhythm of our days, carrying this secret between us like something both precious and dangerous. But maybe that's not as terrifying as it once seemed. Maybe the secret we carry now is different from the one we carried before. Instead of hiding from feelings we were afraid to acknowledge, we'll be protecting something we've chosen together. Instead of pretending nothing exists between us, we'll be keeping something sacred safe from a world that might not understand or accept it. His breathing shifts slightly, and I know he's beginning to drift closer to waking. Soon he'll open his eyes and have to decide whether to regret what we've done or embrace it. Soon we'll have to talk about what this means, what we want it to mean, how we navigate the space between what we are to each other in darkness and what we can be in daylight. But for now, in these last precious moments before dawn forces us back into the complicated world of labels and expectations and other people's opinions, there's only this: his warm weight pressed against my side, our fingers intertwined beneath the blanket, the quiet certainty that whatever we face when morning comes, we won't face it alone. The secret we carry now isn't built from shame or fear or the desperate need to hide. It's built from choice, from trust, from the profound intimacy of being seen and accepted and chosen by someone who knows every part of you. And that makes all the difference.